Welcome to Iraqi Dinar News, where you receive real and authentic updates about the Iraqi dinar. If you want to stay informed with moment-by-moment developments, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Today we are discussing an important topic that frequently generates confusion among Iraqi dinar followers around the world. The issue centers on expectations regarding the future value of the Iraqi dinar, whether officials can reveal future exchange rate plans in advance, and why governments and central banks generally avoid providing specific details about currency valuation decisions before they officially occur. Many observers of Iraq's financial system often ask the same questions. What will the future value of the Iraqi dinar be? When will the exchange rate change? Is there a date already set for a future adjustment? These questions are understandable because exchange rates influence trade, investment, government spending, and overall economic confidence. However, one of the most important realities of modern monetary policy is that central banks and governments rarely, if ever, publicly announce a future currency value before an official policy decision is implemented. The statement we are analyzing today emphasizes a straightforward point. Iraqi authorities cannot legally or practically announce a future exchange rate value long before any official monetary action takes place. They also cannot provide guarantees regarding when such a change might occur. This is not unique to Iraq. In fact, this principle applies to central banks and monetary authorities throughout the world. To understand why, it is important to look at how exchange rate policy works. The value of a national currency is connected to a broad range of economic factors. These include inflation levels, foreign currency reserves, economic growth, government finances, trade balances, banking sector stability, and overall market confidence. Because these factors can change over time, any discussion regarding future exchange rate adjustments remains subject to ongoing economic conditions and policy evaluations. For this reason, responsible monetary institutions avoid making promises about future currency values. If a central bank publicly announced a future exchange rate far in advance, it could trigger market distortions, speculation, and potentially destabilizing financial activity. Businesses, investors, and currency traders could react immediately, creating unintended consequences before any policy action is actually implemented. This is why official communication from monetary authorities is usually careful, measured, and highly controlled. Central banks often discuss economic objectives, policy goals, reform initiatives, and financial stability measures. However, they generally stop short of revealing future exchange rate values or specific implementation dates. When examining Iraq specifically, the role of the country's monetary policy is largely handled by the Central Bank of Iraq. The institution is responsible for maintaining monetary stability, managing foreign reserves, regulating banking activities, and supporting confidence in the financial system. Like central banks in many countries, the institution evaluates a wide range of economic indicators before making policy decisions. This means that when market participants search for clues regarding the future of the Iraqi dinar, they often focus on economic reforms, banking modernization efforts, government fiscal performance, energy revenues, foreign reserve levels, and international economic relationships. These indicators can provide insight into the overall direction of the economy, but they should not be interpreted as guarantees regarding future exchange rate outcomes. One of the biggest misconceptions in the dinar community is the belief that officials secretly know and publicly hint at a specific future rate. In reality, official statements are often focused on broader economic objectives rather than predetermined exchange rate targets. Policymakers must remain flexible because economic conditions can evolve rapidly. For example, global oil prices can significantly affect Iraq's economic position. Since Iraq's economy remains heavily connected to energy exports, fluctuations in oil markets can influence government revenues, foreign exchange inflows, and budget planning. These developments may impact policy considerations over time. Because of this uncertainty, announcing a future exchange rate years, months, or even weeks in advance would create significant policy risks. Another important consideration involves market expectations. Financial markets function partly on confidence and credibility. If authorities announce a future policy action and circumstances later force them to change course, public confidence may be damaged. Therefore, policymakers generally prefer to communicate decisions when they are ready to implement them, rather than speculate about future outcomes. For Iraqi Dinar followers, this reality highlights the importance of distinguishing between official information and speculation. Rumors often circulate online, claiming that a specific exchange rate has already been selected, or that a particular date has been secretly approved. Yet such claims typically lack official confirmation and should be approached with caution. A responsible analysis focuses on verifiable developments. These may include banking reforms, digital payment initiatives, anti-money laundering improvements, foreign investment activity, infrastructure development, budget execution, and economic diversification efforts. These factors contribute to the broader economic environment that can influence long-term currency stability. The short-term implications of today's discussion are relatively clear. Investors, observers, and dinar followers should not expect official authorities to provide advance notice of a future exchange rate value. This means that any claim suggesting an exact future rate or guaranteed implementation date should be carefully evaluated against credible and official sources. Short-term market expectations are often influenced by headlines, rumors, and social media discussions. However, sustainable currency performance is generally determined by economic fundamentals rather than speculation. The most reliable indicators remain measurable developments within the economy itself. For businesses operating in Iraq, predictability and stability are often more important than sudden exchange rate changes. Stable monetary conditions help companies plan investments, manage costs, and conduct trade more effectively. As a result, policymakers frequently prioritize financial stability and economic confidence when making monetary decisions. For international observers, today's message reinforces a broader principle that applies across global financial markets. Exchange rates are not typically managed through public predictions. Instead, they are influenced by policy decisions, economic performance, and institutional credibility over time. Looking at the longer-term picture, Iraq continues pursuing various economic modernization initiatives. These efforts include strengthening financial institutions, improving payment systems, enhancing banking transparency, and encouraging greater private sector participation. Such reforms are designed to create a stronger economic foundation over the coming years. A stronger economic foundation can support confidence in a nation's financial system. However, it is important to understand that economic reforms and currency valuation are not always directly connected in a simple or immediate way. Reform progress may improve economic resilience without necessarily leading to dramatic exchange rate changes. This distinction is important because public discussions sometimes oversimplify the relationship between reforms and currency value. Economic improvement can take many forms. It may result in stronger investment activity, greater banking sector efficiency, improved government finances, or higher levels of economic diversification. These outcomes can contribute to long-term financial stability, even if exchange rate movements remain gradual. Another factor worth considering is the international environment. Global economic conditions influence nearly every country's monetary policy decisions. Changes in interest rates, commodity prices, geopolitical developments, and international trade trends can all affect economic planning. Iraq is no exception. As a result, policymakers must constantly adapt to changing conditions. This flexibility further explains why future exchange rate values are rarely announced ahead of time. Economic realities can change, and monetary authorities must retain the ability to respond accordingly. For members of the Iraqi Dinar community, patience and critical thinking remain essential. It is easy to become excited by bold claims or dramatic predictions. However, successful analysis requires focusing on facts rather than assumptions. Official statements, economic data, and measurable policy developments provide a more reliable foundation for understanding the dinar's future than unverified rumors. The statement we are examining today essentially encourages the use of common sense when evaluating currency-related information. It reminds audiences that governments and central banks operate within legal, regulatory, and economic frameworks. They cannot simply announce future exchange rate values at will, nor can they guarantee outcomes far in advance without risking financial instability. This perspective aligns with how modern monetary systems function throughout the world. Whether examining major economies or developing markets, policymakers generally communicate broad objectives rather than future exchange rate promises. Transparency remains important, but transparency does not mean revealing every potential policy decision before it occurs. As Iraq continues its economic development journey, observers should monitor concrete indicators rather than speculative forecasts. Key areas to watch include foreign reserve strength, inflation management, banking sector modernization, fiscal discipline, investment flows, and overall economic growth. These factors provide valuable insight into the health of the economy and the broader environment surrounding the Iraqi dinar. It is also worth noting that currency value alone does not determine economic success. A healthy economy depends on productive industries, efficient institutions, stable governance, strong infrastructure, and a functioning financial sector. Exchange rates are one component of a much larger economic picture. Therefore, while discussions about future dinar valuation remain popular, the more important story often involves the underlying reforms and economic developments taking place across the country. These are the factors that ultimately contribute to long-term financial stability and investor confidence. In summary, the central message of today's discussion is straightforward. Iraqi authorities are not in a position to legally or responsibly announce a future exchange rate value ahead of an official policy decision. They also cannot provide guaranteed dates for potential changes. This approach reflects standard international monetary practices designed to protect market stability and maintain public confidence. For Iraqi dinar followers, this means that caution should be exercised whenever specific rates or dates are presented as certain outcomes. Responsible analysis should focus on official information, economic fundamentals, and verified developments rather than speculation. Understanding this distinction can help viewers make more informed judgments about the news and avoid unrealistic expectations. Thank you for joining us for today's update. If you appreciate responsible, factual, and balanced coverage of Iraqi dinar developments and Iraq's economy, be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. As always, this content is provided for informational and educational purposes only. It should not be considered financial, investment, or trading advice. Please conduct your own research and consult qualified financial professionals before making any financial decisions.